911 operators of Reddit, what's the strangest, serious emergency you've heard? The emergency itself wasn't particularly strange, vaginal bleeding during pregnancy, nor was the call mine, but in training I listened to a call that contained the following exchange: so she's bleeding now? Yep. Where is she bleeding from? From her bottom part. Which bottom part, sir? I need you to be specific. Her rectum, front part. Wait, what? Sir, is she bleeding from her rectum or from the front? God, she's bleeding from her hole. 911, what's your emergency? There's a pig in the road. A big one. Sir, where are you? At the stoplight. It's the biggest damn pig I have ever seen. Get someone here now. One stoplight town. The bar is near the intersection. How big is the pig? About the size of a Volkswagen. How much have you had to drink? I'm not drunk. It's a giant pig the size of a small car. What is wrong with you people? Officers show up to find a full-grown hippo that had escaped from the local wild animal park. Big pig. This was at 2:30 a.m. when the bars close. Lots of calls from elderly people hallucinating because of a UTI. One woman had been following CPR instructions, and when the crew arrived, she was doing very gentle chest compressions on her slightly confused, but very much alive, cat. We had a lady who would call all the time about people in her yard or on her house, usually doing nasty things. Always a false alarm. This lady had been calling since way before I got my job, and even now after I've switched agencies, she's probably still calling. She's mental, but not a danger to herself or others, so no real need to commit her involuntarily. Well, one day we get a call from her, about a man at her house, causing the troubles for her. My supervisor, who had answered the call, finally got fed up and asked to speak to the man. To everyone's surprise, the woman handed the phone over to the man, and there was someone there. It was her brother. He was there trying to get her committed. We ended up, I believe, asking him to leave the property, because he couldn't have her committed against her will at that time. Just goes to show you that crazy doesn't always mean wrong. I had a woman who was always calling me and reporting strange things. There's a guy in her living room who won't talk to her and is sitting in her chair. There are little bugs with lights on them, not fireflies, she insisted, on her walls. There's snakes under my carpet, etc. She was very old and had dementia, so we usually knew it was all in her head. One night she called and reported that there were about 30 cats on the roof of her house. Sure, lady. So I sent an officer over to check on her. He was pretty shocked when he showed up, and there were, in fact, approximately 30 cats standing on the roof of this crazy woman's house at midnight. We still have no clue why. I use this story to teach new employees that no matter what, you have to go with the information that's provided to you until proven otherwise. Because sometimes the crazy lady isn't crazy. I've got one for ya. The obligatory not 911, but it'll tie together. So, I worked for an alarm monitoring company. I get an inbound call in the middle of the night from somewhere in Philadelphia. Guy on the line sounds real out of it. Drunk maybe? My first thought was it was someone calling in to cancel a false alarm. Messed up voice was them waking from sleep. Not uncommon. Some alarms, start going off in my head. The guy isn't making a whole lot of sense, and it's really hard to get basic information out of him. Eventually I pieced together that he's a gas station worker, and he's been shot. For some reason he dialed the alarm company instead of 911. We weren't even his alarm company. There was probably an old sticker in the shop somewhere, so I've got no info on this guy. Mind you, we don't have any magical reverse phone lookup system, and our systems are locked down such that we can't access a web browser. Genius, I know. Pulled out my phone. Also not allowed. Managed to look up a gas station with the inbound number in Philly, called 911 and got police and medical out there. No idea how it ultimately shook out. Stayed on the line keeping the guy conscious and talking until they got there, then disconnected. Heard this one the other day. Not from the perspective of an operator but close. EMS responds to a call where a man reported having multiple potatoes stuck up his rectum colon. Not red potatoes, those big brown suckers. The kicker, I was washing my potatoes in the shower when I slipped and fell and all the potatoes went up there. Oh what? I'm not a dispatcher but work in IQ. One night we get this poor bastard in who had fallen in the shower, hitting the back of his neck on a shower chair. He was sore but otherwise felt fine. An hour or so later he and his girlfriend are getting busy and she sits on his face. He feels an electric shock in his neck and suddenly can't move. Turns out he had fractured his spine in the fall and didn't know it until the pressure from his lady finished the job. He's now a quad. I once dispatched a helicopter for a woman bored by a reindeer. Apparently there is a reindeer farm for tourists and she tried to kiss it. My pilot and flight crew laughed at the moy and asked 3 times to repeat. I responded to a man in his whitey tighties standing on the yellow lines in the middle of the road. Arrived on scene to find this to be true. The reason he was in the middle of the road was to practice his karate moves on cars. Dispatch was even having a hard time keeping from laughing. Best memorable call I had was when I was still training. It was a few days into starting to take 911 calls on my own with my trainer just listening in, and I get a very calm lady asking for paramedics. I ask her for the address and why my son cut off his I parroted what I heard back while mentally I was going, "Excuse me, what?" Lady confirms that her son cut off his willy with a knife and there's blood everywhere. Now the whole room is bustling getting the resources I need for this guy with a knife who is probably bleeding out. I ask where her son is in the house, where the knife is, etc. When the lady can't really answer my questions, that's when I know something is up. She has no idea where he is and she never saw him cut anything off. So I ask how she knew her son did this and she replies, "I have visions and revelations. I can see the knife." Oh boy. It becomes a back and forth figuring out who her son is and if anyone's even hurt. Lady even gave a neighbor's address instead of her own. Eventually we find her son's phone number through associations. The guy is actually just 2 years younger than her and a roommate. So my supervisor hops on the phone and calls the guy and cuts to the chase. "Is this so and so? Did you cut off your Spoiler, his was still attached to his body. That was almost 4 years ago and I still bring it up to curious new trainees when they ask. Obligatory not 911 operator, I'm the son of the caller. My dad called 911 late one night to report hitting a 6-foot-tall chicken while driving and running off into the ditch. He had just crashed his car and his voice was a bit shaky on the phone, so the operator asked him to repeat himself a couple of times and then promised to send someone to help. The first cop on scene got out of his car with a breathalyzer in hand. By the time he got to the back of my dad's car, he was laughing hysterically over his radio telling people that it wasn't a DUI call. My dad actually did hit a 6-foot-tall chicken. And that's the story about the night my dad and all the local cops learned about emu farming. We got a call from a woman having severe abdominal pains. Simple enough. We asked the normal questions. Are you feeling faint? Are you vomiting blood? Stuff like that. Then we asked if it was traumatic or not. Well, she eventually tells us that she had a tampon stuck inside of her for more than 20 days, and she thinks that might be why she's hurting. Got a call from some girl saying, "Someone stole my car." I ask if she saw what direction they went. She says they are heading down the street and starts telling me the stores they are passing. I ask if she's following them. She says that she is in the car. I freak the out. She then says to whoever is driving, "Babe, slow down, this is crazy." Turns out she and her boyfriend were arguing. He started driving crazy since he was mad and she decided to call it in as a stolen vehicle. Was a 911 op for 5 years. Had a female call, screaming, "He's stabbing me, he's stabbing me." She's get away from her husband who's going at her over and over with an ice pick. It becomes evident to me that she's moving around the house in an attempt to get away. I'm telling her, "Can you barricade yourself? Can you get away from him? Can you get out of the house?" She told me that she's trying and that interjects that her husband is blind. Now, I'm really confused. She's not giving me much information, typical with panicky victims in the heat of a crime, and I'm trying to figure out how she can't get away from a blind person. She gets quiet, and I can hear him saying all kinds of nasty things about her. Cops get there, secure the scene, and they fly her to a trauma center. She lived. Still, we were all standing around after, so confused that this woman couldn't escape a blind man from stabbing her. My friend in the ER told me how someone passed out on an escalator and his hand was running until the grate where the top of the escalator meets the floor for half an hour before someone found him. His hand was pretty messed up from what I heard. Had a dude who called in on Thanksgiving because my wife is chasing me around the house with a knife because I called her bird dry. Also had a guy shoot somebody while on the phone with me. Also had a guy get arrested while on the phone with me. I don't miss those days. Strangest call, kid who felt experimenty and lost a up his wasn't anything I could do but transport to the ER and try not to laugh. Most serious call, milk truck T-boned an Amish buggy going about 60 miles per hour. The buggy was in the wrong. It annihilated the buggy and I don't remember for sure but I'm pretty sure the occupants inside did not survive. I remember they got flown to the ER with massive trauma but it was like 2007 to 2009-ish. Been an EMT for over 12 years now going on 13. I feel old lol, pretty sure I'm going to move back to volunteering soon. This is a true story from when I was a journalist. Man called 911 and reports that he had been shot in the head. Who shot you? Don't know. Is he still in the house? Wasn't ever in the house. Dispatches cops and medical and gets more questions to ask, really, health, loss of consciousness, etc. Figured the guy was mistaken. Nope. Hole in the window, blood all over, nasty wound to the center of the man's foreheads. Went to the hospital where he was stitched up. Bullet never penetrated the skull. Minor concussion, vertebrae damage. Police found pieces of bullet in the wall behind where he reported standing and it matched the hole in the window. Never found the shooter. Determined it was a .38 from a long range, tumbling and hit him at such an angle that it was deflected. Cops called him Hammerhead. Another funnier style call that we had was during the winter. It was extremely cold for where we live, Alabama, in the single digits. We had been getting several calls about water pipes bursting. I took a 911 call right after taking 6-7 calls about pipes bursting. Naturally, the woman sounds very disgruntled and said that her water just broke at 3:30 in the morning. Me, not thinking, asked her who her water was through. She responds with, "What the fuck are you asking me? My water just broke." That is when the light bulb lit up. She was pregnant. Baby was born healthy, by the way. Not me, but my aunt is a dispatcher. She got a call a couple years ago from a guy who, had something stuck in him. She's actually dealt with this type of thing before. Anyways, paramedics get there, and find out it was an entire butternut squash up this guy. He couldn't get it out. I'm just wondering, how big is this guy's? My dad was an ambulance driver for the French army in Tahiti, and he received a call one day that an intoxicated army officer jumped into a pool without any water, head first.